Hi, it's Barb, Meeple PhD, with another Cosmic Game Connection. Earlier this year, the Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, or TESS, announced its first finding of an Earth-sized planet in the habitable zone of its star. TOI 700d orbits a star that's about 40% smaller and less massive than our Sun, along with two sibling planets. All of these planets are so close to their star that they're probably tidally locked, meaning that one side of that planet always faces its star. Now, TOI 700d happens to be inside the region around that star where conditions could be just right for liquid water to form on its surface. Now, we don't know yet what the environment on TOI 700d might be like, but one research group decided to try and model it using the planet's size and orbital parameters and other information about its star. And what they were looking for was to see if any of these models yielded a temperature and pressure that would be just right on the planet's surface for life as we know it. One model was an all-ocean world with a carbon dioxide-dominated atmosphere, and it resulted in a planet that was almost uniformly hot everywhere. Another model was an all-land planet with an atmosphere similar to Earth's, and this one had winds on it that started on the night side of the planet and worked their way around to the front, converging almost to a point on the side of the star, on the side of the planet facing the star. Now, like I said, we don't yet know if any of these models are correct. But one of the cool things about TESS is that it is surveying the 200,000 nearest stars to look for planets. Because it's focusing on these nearby stars, it's setting us up to have follow-up observations of some of the most interesting planets with missions like the James Webb Space Telescope. Those follow-up observations may be able to tell us if there are atmospheres present on any of these planets. And if there are atmospheres, they may be able to tell us a bit about what elements are present. And so we might be able to start narrowing down some of the models that these researchers looked at and get a better idea of what the conditions on this Earth-sized world could be. When I thought about TOI 700d, its sibling planets, the star it orbits, and the researchers studying whether or not those planets could be habitable, the game that came to mind was Planetarium. In Planetarium, players are manipulating a star system's 4 fledgling planets and the matter that surrounds them in order to evolve those planets to different states that match their secret game end goals. The game is set up with the board in the center of the table. The 4 planets are placed on their starting positions. The matter tokens are randomized and placed on their positions on the board. And then the 4 habitable/hostile tokens are each placed on the hostile side on each side of the board, corresponding to the 4 different planets. Players each get a player mat, cubes of their color, and 2 each of the low, high, and final evolution cards. Players place their hexagonal scoring tokens on the board, and then discard 1 of their final evolution cards for a final hand of 5, and then they're ready to begin. On their turn, players will move either a matter token or a planet forward or clockwise in its orbit. They can either move it along one of the circular orbits, which are the thick lines, or they can move along one of the thin lines, which moves that piece to the next inner or outer orbit. Matter can't land on other matter, and planets can't land on other planets. However, if a matter token lands on a planet, or vice versa, the player collects that matter token and places it on their player mat on the corresponding planet. The one exception to this movement rule is that a planet can sweep out its orbit. If there are a bunch of empty spots in front of it on one of those circular or thick line orbits, it can move until it hits the next piece of matter. This includes jumping over another planet. At this time, the player can optionally play one of their high or low evolution cards if they have the right elements for the planet that they are evolving. If they do this, they place that card face up on the side of the board corresponding to that planet. They pay the matter tokens that are the cost of the card onto the evolution track, which is basically a timer in the game. And they immediately take the points, and then they assess whether or not that planet's habitability has changed. If so, they flip the habitability/hostile token to the other side. To end their turn, they draw back up so that they always have a hand of 5. Play continues until the evolution track is filled up. However, once someone places a token on the acceleration marker, the double arrow spot, the tokens all now move 2 spots instead of 1, thus accelerating the game. Once a player has placed a marker on the last spot in the evolution track, they can then finish their turn, but play some of the final evolution cards from their hands if they meet those requirements. Each other player gets 1 additional turn, which is played exactly the same as the others, but they too then get to play their final evolution cards if they meet those requirements. After tallying any game end points, the player who has best manipulated the system into the one that they want, or rather gotten the most points, wins. Of course, real planetary systems are formed by physics and chemistry, not a person pushing the planets around and the matter around in exactly the way that they would like it to be. But Planetarium does give you a good way to envision the chaotic environment that exists around a newborn star and the various considerations that go into whether or not a planet is habitable. We've been finding a lot of star systems out there, and we yet haven't found one similar to our own. Now, part of that is that it's a lot easier to find giant planets around tiny stars. But we've been getting a glimpse into just how weird and wild and crazy all of those different planetary systems are, and it's exciting to think about. So the next time you pull Planetarium to the table, and you're evolving one of your planets in some bizarre way, just think about there might be a planet out there like that. And someday we might have the technology to find it. Thanks for joining me. I'll be back again with another Cosmic Game Connection. And in the meantime, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter as @MeeplePhD, and you can follow my blog at meeplephd.com. I'm gonna try this one more time because washing machine.